Most people play checkers with their honesty. You're about to play chess with your intelligence. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Being a good person does not protect you. Being transparent does not earn you respect. Playing fair does not guarantee fair treatment in return. The world doesn't reward your intentions. It rewards clarity, composure, and the quiet ability to see 3 moves ahead while everyone else is still reacting to the last one. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that honesty means showing every card in your hand, that integrity means making yourself an open book, that being strategic is the same as being manipulative. And that belief, that beautiful, naive belief, has cost you. Maybe it cost you the promotion that went to someone half as competent but twice as visible. Maybe it cost you the negotiation where you left money on the table because you felt awkward asserting your value. Maybe it cost you the relationship where your openness was mistaken for weakness and your trust was returned as betrayal. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming intelligent, dangerously intelligent. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince 500 years ago, and his name has been dragged through the mud ever since. But strip away the Renaissance violence, the royal backstabbing, the outdated brutality, and what remains is a manual for reading power as it actually operates, not as we wish it would. Machiavelli didn't invent deception or self-interest. He just had the audacity to write it down. And the principles he documented aren't relics. They're the physics of human behavior. They're still running in every boardroom, every negotiation, every relationship where something is at stake. Today, you're going to learn 8 of those principles, refined and rebuilt for the modern world. Not to harm, to protect. Not to manipulate, to stop being manipulated. This is your psychological armor. Before we go one word further, let's draw a line in the sand. This is not a toolkit for sociopaths. This is not permission to lie, gaslight, or treat people as pawns. If that's what you're here for, leave now. What you're about to learn is defensive intelligence, the ability to protect yourself in a world where not everyone plays clean, where kindness is sometimes mistaken for weakness, and where silence is often weaponized against the unprepared. This is for you if you've been burned by oversharing, if you've handed someone your vulnerabilities like a gift and watched them use it as leverage, if you've been honest to a fault and found yourself outmaneuvered by people who had no such obligation to the truth. This is for you if you've been steamrolled in negotiations, if you've walked away from a salary conversation, a business deal, or even a family boundary, feeling like you just lost a game you didn't know you were playing. This is for you if you work hard, deliver results, and somehow remain invisible while others who do half the work get twice the recognition. If you've ever wondered why competence isn't enough, why being good at your job doesn't automatically translate to being valued, this is your answer. You're not broken. You're just playing by a set of rules that half the room abandoned years ago. Here's the responsibility that comes with this knowledge. Intelligence without ethics makes you powerful for a moment and hated for a lifetime. It creates enemies, burns bridges, and leaves you isolated at the top of a hill nobody wants to climb. But intelligence with ethics, strategic thinking combined with respect, clarity, and boundaries, creates something much rarer, lasting influence and earned respect. Machiavelli has been painted as a villain for centuries, but he wasn't endorsing cruelty. He was documenting reality. He watched princes rise and fall, saw which behaviors led to survival and which led to assassination, and he wrote it down without the comforting lies most philosophers wrapped around power. He was a realist in a world that preferred fantasy. His crime wasn't being evil, it was being honest about how power actually works. What we're doing here is taking that honesty and filtering it through a modern ethical lens. You'll learn to see the game clearly, to move with intention, and to protect yourself without becoming the thing you're protecting yourself from. Strategy isn't the opposite of integrity. It's integrity's armor. Now let's build it.
Here's what you're walking away with today. 6 rebranded Machiavellian secrets, drawn from 8 of his core principles, consolidated and sharpened for maximum impact. These aren't abstract philosophy lectures. They're operating instructions for the psychology of influence, self-protection, and quiet power. First, controlled opacity, the art of strategic disclosure, knowing when to reveal and when to let silence do the heavy lifting. Second, outcome obsession, how to detach from the need to be right or liked and lock onto results instead. Third, strategic patience, letting time, pressure, and other people's impulses work in your favor while you stay composed. Fourth, selective alliance, building relationships based on competence and mutual benefit, not sentimental loyalty or guilt. Fifth, reputation as currency, understanding that your image is more negotiable than your effort and learning to shape it deliberately. And sixth, adaptive morality, keeping your principles fixed while your tactics stay flexible so you can act effectively without compromising who you are. After we unpack those 6 principles, we'll move into real-world case studies. You'll see exactly how these principles play out in the workplace when someone tries to take credit for your work, in a negotiation when you're hit with a lowball offer, and in a relationship when a boundary is being tested. You'll get sentence stems you can use tomorrow, micro drills you can practice in low-stakes situations, a 1-page mental checklist that helps you read any room for information asymmetry, emotional bait, and hidden leverage. And then we'll close with a 7-day challenge, a structured plan to take 1 principle per day, apply it in your life, and track what changes. Not theory, not inspiration. Repetitions with consequences. By the end of this video, you'll have a mental operating system that reads rooms faster, controls information flow tighter, and shapes outcomes more quietly than 90% of the people you'll ever sit across from. You'll stop reacting. You'll start responding. You'll stop hoping the world notices your effort. You'll start ensuring it does. If you're ready to trade reaction for strategy, comment strategic, not reactive right now. Let me know you're in, and let's begin.
The first secret is this. Transparency without strategy is just handing people a loaded weapon and hoping they don't pull the trigger. Most people treat honesty like a virtue with no off switch. They share their plans before they're secure. They reveal their doubts to colleagues who smile and take notes. They announce their next move in rooms full of people who benefit from them staying exactly where they are. And then they wonder why their ideas get stolen, their vulnerabilities get weaponized, and their ambitions get quietly undermined before they ever gain momentum. Here's the contrast. Oversharing is emotional. Selective disclosure is strategic. One is driven by the need to be understood, to be liked, to prove you have nothing to hide. The other is driven by outcome, by asking what serves the goal, what protects your position, and what keeps leverage in your hands until the moment it's wise to release it. Machiavelli understood 2 principles that most people never connect. First, appear one way while operating another. Not dishonesty, duality. Let people see the version of you that serves the context. In a meeting, you can be collaborative and curious while privately holding a decision you've already made. In a negotiation, you can appear flexible while knowing exactly where your line is. Second, never outshine the wrong person at the wrong time. Visibility isn't always power. Sometimes it's a target. Learn to control the spotlight. Step into it when it serves you, deflect it when it protects you, and never let your full hand show until trust has been tested and earned. This is controlled opacity. Strategic ambiguity that protects your leverage, your plans, and your peace. Here's the tool, the need-to-know filter. Before you share anything, a goal, a frustration, a piece of personal history, a work strategy, pause and ask yourself one question. Does this help them help me, or does this just give them ammunition? If someone asks about your weekend, you don't owe them a therapy session.
If a manager asks about your long-term plans, you don't have to announce you're interviewing elsewhere. If a colleague wants to know how you close that deal, you can share the outcome without revealing the entire playbook. Information is currency. Spend it intentionally. Now, this doesn't mean become a vault. It means become discerning. There are absolutely moments when revelation builds trust, deepens connection, and creates alliance. But those moments come after patterns, not promises. Trust is earned through consistency over time, not declared in a first conversation. Here's the guideline. Reveal when trust has been demonstrated through action, when someone has protected your confidence before, when they've shown up without being asked, when their incentives align with yours. Conceal when trust is untested, in new relationships, in rooms with mixed loyalty, in moments where you're not sure who benefits from your honesty and who's simply collecting intelligence. Controlled opacity isn't about being fake, it's about being intentional. It's the difference between a glass house and a home with curtains. People don't need to see everything to respect you. In fact, they'll respect you more when they realize you're not performing your inner world for their approval. You're simply moving with clarity, composure, and the quiet confidence of someone who knows that silence, sometimes, is the most intelligent thing you can say.
The second secret is brutal in its simplicity. The scoreboard doesn't care how you felt during the game. Most people spend their entire lives optimizing for the wrong metric. They want to be right. They want to be liked. They want to win the argument, get the last word, prove their intelligence in the meeting, or make sure everyone knows they were the good guy in the breakup. And in chasing that validation, they lose the actual outcome. They get the applause and miss the promotion. They win the debate and lose the relationship. They protect their ego and sacrifice the result. Here's the contrast. Validation seeking is playing for the audience. Goal locking is playing for the win. One is about how you're perceived in the moment. The other is about what you walk away with when the moment is over. Strategic thinkers detach, not from care, from ego. They learn to separate their identity from the transaction. In a negotiation, they don't take a lowball offer personally. It's not an insult, it's an opening move. In a conflict, they don't need to prove they were right. They need to reach resolution. In a career decision, they don't ask what feels fair. They ask what moves them closer to the life they're building. This is outcome obsession, the ability to subordinate your need for comfort, validation, and being understood in favor of the result that actually matters. Machiavelli wrote that the prince must learn to be fox and lion, cunning and strong, but above all, he must focus on keeping power, not keeping everyone happy. Translate that to your life. Your job is not to be the most popular person in the room. It's to leave the room with what you came for. And sometimes, that means letting someone else feel like they won the conversation while you walk away with the contract. Sometimes, it means losing the argument and keeping the relationship. Sometimes it means saying less, appearing agreeable, and maneuvering quietly while everyone else is performing their positions. There's a stoic thread running through this. Marcus Aurelius talked about controlling what you can control and releasing what you can't. You can't control whether people like you. You can't control whether they think you're right. You can't control their opinion, their mood, or their motives. But you can control your objective. You can control the moves you make toward it, and you can control whether you let your feelings about the process derail you from the destination. Here's the tool. Reverse goal scripting. Most people start with where they are and hope their way forward. Strategic people start with the end and work backward. Let's say you want a 20% raise within 6 months. Don't start by asking what feels achievable or comfortable. Start with the outcome. What would have to be true for your manager to say yes? You'd need documented wins, visible impact, a comp review showing you're underpaid relative to market, a conversation framed around value, not need. Now script backward. What wins do you need to generate in the next 90 days? What market data do you need to gather in the next 30? What narrative do you need to start shaping this week? Suddenly, the path is clear. It's not about whether you deserve it or whether it's fair. It's about what moves are necessary, not comfortable, necessary to produce the result. Research on negotiation backs this up. Studies show that negotiators who depersonalize, who treat the process as a problem to solve rather than a battle to win, close better deals and preserve relationships. They're not detached from the outcome. They're detached from their ego's need to be validated during the process. That detachment creates space for creativity, flexibility, and leverage. Outcome obsession doesn't make you cold. It makes you effective. It's the difference between someone who needs to be seen as the hero and someone who's fine being underestimated as long as they get the result. It's the person who loses the argument in the meeting and wins the decision in the follow-up email. It's the quiet player who lets everyone else perform while they secure the W. Stop asking if you're being respected in the moment. Start asking if you're getting the outcome. The scoreboard is the only judge that matters.
The third secret sounds passive until you understand it. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Most people panic in silence. They rush to fill the void. Someone makes an accusation and they immediately defend. Someone throws out a number in a negotiation and they counter within seconds. A tense email lands in their inbox and they fire back before they've even finished reading it. They mistake speed for strength and reaction for control. And in that rush, they reveal their hand, abandon their leverage, and give away information they didn't need to share. Here's the contrast. Rushing to assert is about relieving your own discomfort. Waiting to collect information is about creating discomfort in others. One is driven by anxiety. The other is driven by strategy. Strategic patience is the ability to let time, pressure, and other people's impulses do the work for you. It's watching someone make an offer and then saying nothing. It's receiving a hostile message and waiting 48 hours before you respond. It's sitting in a meeting where everyone is talking and choosing to stay quiet, knowing that silence makes people nervous, and nervous people overshare. Machiavelli observed that princes who acted impulsively lost wars. Those who waited, who let their enemies exhaust themselves, overextend, reveal divisions, often won without lifting a sword. Sun Tzu captured it even more beautifully. If you wait by the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies will float by, not because you killed them, because they destroyed themselves while you stayed patient, positioned, and out of the blast radius. Silence creates pressure. When you don't respond immediately, the other person starts to wonder, did I say too much? Did I lowball them? Are they angry or just thinking? That wondering creates doubt. Doubt creates mistakes. Mistakes create openings. Delay reveals information. If you send an offer and wait, you'll learn how desperate the other side is by how fast they follow up. If someone levels a criticism and you stay quiet, you'll discover whether it's a genuine concern or just an emotional outburst by whether they double down or soften the next day. Time is a filter. It separates what's real from what's reactive. Here's the tool: the 48-hour rule. In any charged situation, an argument, a major decision, a career move, a confrontation, wait 2 full days before you decide or respond. Not because you're avoiding conflict, because you're letting the dust settle and the data surface. Let's say someone sends you an email that feels like a professional grenade. Your instinct is to respond immediately, to defend yourself, to set the record straight. Don't. Wait 48 hours. In that window, 3 things will happen. First, your emotional charge will drop and you'll read the situation more clearly. Second, new information will often emerge. A follow-up message, a conversation with a colleague, context you didn't have in the heat of the moment. Third, the other person will either escalate or de-escalate on their own, and that behavior tells you everything about whether this is a real issue or a bad day projected onto you. The 48-hour rule protects you from impulse and arms you with clarity. It turns reaction
into response. And response is always more intelligent than reaction. Now, a guardrail. Strategic patience is not avoidance. It's not ghosting people or dodging accountability. If a situation requires immediate action, a safety issue, a moral line, a time-sensitive decision, then act. This principle applies to moments where the urgency is emotional, not operational, where the pressure to respond now is coming from your discomfort, not the calendar. There's a reason the best negotiators are comfortable with long pauses, a reason the best leaders don't feel the need to have the last word in every meeting, a reason the most effective people you know seem unshakable when everyone else is spiraling. They've learned that power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just waits. While everyone else is reacting, explaining, defending, and overplaying their hand, you're watching, you're listening, you're collecting. And when the moment is right, not when it's comfortable, but when it's right, you move once and you move well. Let other people exhaust themselves in the current. You stay positioned by the river. Patient, prepared, dangerous.
The fourth secret will make some people uncomfortable. Not everyone who calls you a friend deserves access to your future. Most people build their inner circle based on histories, sentiment, and guilt. They stay loyal to the college roommate who only calls when they need something. They keep the coworker in their network who hasn't returned a favor in 3 years. They maintain relationships out of obligation, nostalgia, with a fear of being seen as cold. And in doing so, they drain their time, energy, and opportunities on people who are passengers, not partners. Here's the contrast. Sentimental loyalty is about the past. Functional trust is about the present and future. One asks, how long have we known each other? The other asks, are we helping each other grow, or are we just keeping each other comfortable? Selective alliance is the practice of aligning with competence and shared interest, not with loyalty theater. It's recognizing that your capacity for relationship is finite, and your trajectory depends on who you're walking with. Machiavelli warned princes against keeping advisors who were loyal in title but useless in crisis. A loyal fool is more dangerous than a capable rival because the fool will fail you when it matters, and you'll hesitate to replace them out of misplaced obligation. This doesn't mean become transactional. It means become intentional. There are people in your life right now who are dead weight. They take more than they give, they drain your optimism, they celebrate your consistency but resent your growth. And you keep them close because cutting ties feels cruel. But here's the truth. Keeping someone in your inner circle out of guilt isn't kindness. It's cowardice, and it's costly. Every hour you spend managing a one-sided relationship is an hour you're not investing in a reciprocal one. Every piece of advice you take from someone who hasn't done what you're trying to do is a detour. Every celebration you share with someone who secretly hopes you don't go too far is a leak in your confidence. Strategic people audit their relationships the way they audit their finances. They look at who's contributing, who's coasting, and who's quietly undermining, and then they reallocate accordingly. Here's the tool: the quarterly relationship audit. 4 times a year, sit down and list the 20 to 30 people who have the most access to your time, attention, and decisions. For each person, rate 2 things on a scale of 1 to 5. First, reciprocity. Do they give as much as they take, or is this relationship lopsided? Second, alignment. Are your values, goals, and trajectories moving in the same direction, or are you growing apart? Anyone who scores a 7 or below combined, prune or downgrade. That doesn't mean ghost them or treat them poorly. It means stop prioritizing them. Stop seeking their opinion on big decisions. Stop offering your energy when they haven't earned it. Let the relationship drift to its natural distance. Anyone who scores an 8 or above, invest, reach out, create opportunities, introduce them to people who can help them. Be the kind of ally that makes you worth keeping. Now, the ethical guardrail. Treat people well on the way out. Burning bridges is amateur hour. You don't need to announce the audit or issue a breakup speech. You simply become less available. You stop initiating. You're polite, warm even, but no longer invested. If they notice and ask, be honest without being harsh. I'm in a season where I need to focus my energy differently. I wish you well. That's it. No drama, no destruction, just boundaries. Selective alliance also means knowing when to let go of relationships that were right for one chapter but wrong for the next. The friend who was perfect for your 20s might not be built for your 30s. The mentor who launched you might not be able to guide you at the next altitude. And that's okay. Outgrowing people isn't betrayal, it's evolution. Machiavelli also knew this. Alliances are contextual. A partnership that serves both parties in one season may become a liability in another. The key is to recognize the shift early and adjust with respect, not resentment. You are not obligated to carry everyone who started the journey with you across the finish line. Some people are meant for miles, and some are meant for moments. Your job is to discern the difference and build your circle accordingly, with people who are competent, aligned, and capable of matching your energy when it counts. Loyalty is beautiful, but loyalty without reciprocity is just martyrdom in disguise. Choose your alliances like you choose your goals, based on where you're going, not where you've been.
The fifth secret is the one that idealists hate and realists master. Your image is more liquid than your effort. Most people operate under a beautiful lie. They believe that if they just work hard enough, stay late enough, deliver quality consistently enough, someone will notice. Someone will reward them. Someone will tap them on the shoulder and say, "We see you. Here's what you deserve." And then they watch, confused and bitter, as the promotion goes to the person who did half the work but told twice the story, as the opportunity flows toward the colleague who's more visible than competent, as their silent excellence gets eclipsed by someone else's loud adequacy. Here's the contrast. Hoping competence gets noticed is passive. Shaping perception deliberately is active. One is about what you do in the shadows and pray someone sees. The other is about ensuring the right people see the right things at the right time. Fairness is a myth. It's a comforting story we tell children so they'll play nice in the sandbox. But the adult world doesn't run on fairness. It runs on visibility, narrative, and perception. The person who controls the story controls the outcome. And if you're not shaping how you're perceived, someone else is doing it for you, and they're probably getting it wrong. Machiavelli understood that a prince could be virtuous and still lose his throne if he appeared weak. Image wasn't vanity, it was survival. Reputation was currency, more negotiable than gold, because gold sits in a vault and reputation moves through rooms you'll never enter, shaping opinions, opening doors, or closing them before you ever knock. This is reputation as currency, the strategic practice of building and managing how you're perceived so that your competence is matched by your visibility and your effort translates into opportunity. Now let's be clear, this is not about becoming a self-promoter who talks more than they deliver. It's not about arrogance, exaggeration, or performance. It's about making sure the value you create is seen by the people who can act on it. Because the brutal truth is this: if stakeholders don't know what you've done, it might as well not exist. Here's the tool: the 3x3 perception plan. It's simple, repeatable, and eliminates the guesswork. First, identify 3 stakeholders. These are the people whose opinion of you directly impacts your trajectory. Your manager, your manager's manager, a client, a board member, a peer in another department who controls resources or opportunities. Write down their names. Second, for each stakeholder, define 3 qualities you want associated with you. Not aspirational fluff, specific career-relevant traits. Maybe it's strategic thinker, reliable closer, and connector. Maybe it's innovative problem solver, calm under pressure, and team multiplier. Choose qualities that align with where you're trying to go, not just where you are. Third, engineer one visible proof point per quarter per person. A proof point is an artifact, a moment, or a contribution that demonstrates one of those three qualities in a way the stakeholder can see or hear about. It's not bragging, it's evidence. Let's say you want your manager to see you as a strategic thinker. You don't walk into their office and announce, "I'm strategic." You send a brief email after a project, wrapping up your analysis with a forward-looking insight. You volunteered to present the quarterly review and frame the data in terms of what it means for next quarter's priorities. You introduce them to a contact who could solve a problem they mentioned in passing. Each of those is a proof point: quiet, valuable, visible. Let's say you want a client to perceive you as a connector. You don't tell them you know people. You introduce them to someone who can help them unprompted. That introduction is the artifact. It speaks louder than any claim. The key is to let the work speak, but to position the work where it can be heard. You're not manufacturing false value. You're making sure real value doesn't die in obscurity. A critical note: avoid arrogance. The moment you start performing competence instead of demonstrating it, people smell it. The 3x3 perception plan works because it's anchored in substance. You're not inventing a reputation, you're shaping the way real contributions are perceived and remembered. There's a reason the most successful people you know are rarely the most talented. They're the most visible. They've learned that competence is the baseline and perception is the lever. They understand that decision makers are overwhelmed, distracted, and relying on heuristics, mental shortcuts, to decide who gets the next opportunity. And one of the strongest heuristics is recent, visible proof that you are who you say you are. Your effort in the dark is noble, but nobility doesn't pay the mortgage or unlock the next level. Visibility does, narrative does, reputation does. Stop waiting to be discovered. Start architecting how you're remembered. Manage your reputation like the asset it is, because in a world where attention is scarce and decisions are fast, the person who controls the perception controls the outcome.
The sixth secret is the most misunderstood. You can keep your soul and still win the game. Most people fall into one of two traps. The first group clings to rigid idealism. They believe there's one right way to do things: direct, transparent, by the book, and they refuse to adapt even when the context demands it. They lose negotiations because I don't play games. They get steamrolled in politics because I just tell the truth. They sacrifice results on the altar of principle and call it integrity. The second group abandons principles entirely. They justify lies, shortcuts, and harm with "that's just how the world works." They win in the short term and lose themselves in the process. Here's the contrast: rigid idealism that loses versus values-anchored pragmatism that wins. One treats principles and tactics as the same thing. The other knows they're not. Adaptive morality is the practice of keeping your principles fixed while your tactics stay flexible. It's the understanding that integrity is non-negotiable, but the method you use to express it absolutely is. Your core values, things like don't harm, don't lie, treat people with dignity, those are locked. But how you navigate a hostile room, whether you speak first or last, whether you're direct or indirect, whether you move fast or slow, those are variables, and smart people treat them as such. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn to be both lion and fox, strong and cunning. He must appear virtuous because perception matters, but he must act effectively because survival matters more. This wasn't a call to be fake, it was a call to be contextual. In some rooms, directness builds trust. In others, it gets you targeted. In some negotiations, speed signals confidence. In others, it signals desperation. The principle, serve your people, protect your position,
stays the same. The tactic adapts. Let's kill the confusion right now. This is not situational ethics. Situational ethics says it's okay to lie if it benefits me. Adaptive morality says I will never lie, but I will choose when and how I share the truth based on what the situation requires. Situational ethics is about bending your values. Adaptive morality is about bending your methods while your values stay steel. Here's an example. Let's say your core value is integrity, being honest and honoring your word. Non-negotiable. But integrity doesn't mean you're required to dump every piece of information in every conversation. In a performance review, you can be honest about your accomplishments without listing every mistake. In a conflict, you can be truthful without being brutal. In a negotiation, you can honor your word without showing your bottom line up front. The principle is fixed, the execution adapts to the context. Here's the tool, the Principles Tactics Matrix. It's a 2-column exercise that creates clarity when the pressure is on. On the left side, list your non-negotiables. These are the core values you will not compromise regardless of outcome. Maybe it's, I don't lie. I don't harm people to get ahead. I honor my commitments. I treat people with respect even in conflict. Write 3 to 5. These are your floor. On the right side, list your negotiable methods. These are the tactical variables you're willing to adjust depending on the situation. Maybe it's, I can be direct or indirect depending on the audience. I can move fast or slow depending on the stakes. I can lead visibly or influence quietly depending on the politics. I can be warm or reserved depending on trust levels. Write 5 to 7. Now rehearse. Take a tough scenario you're facing or expect to face, a difficult conversation, a high-stakes negotiation, a political situation at work, and run it through the matrix. Ask yourself, what principle is non-negotiable here? What tactics am I free to adjust? Let's say you're in a meeting where a colleague is trying to throw you under the bus in front of leadership. Your principle? Don't lie and don't let false narratives stand. Your tactics? You could interrupt and correct them in the moment, direct, or you could stay quiet, let them finish, and then calmly provide the facts with receipts in a follow-up email, indirect. Both honor the principle. One is higher risk, higher visibility. The other is lower risk, more controlled. The matrix helps you see that you have options without abandoning your values. This is what separates amateurs from professionals. Amateurs think there's one right way, and they're morally superior for sticking to it even when it costs them everything. Professionals know that principles are the anchor and tactics are the sail. The anchor keeps you from drifting into harm. The sail lets you navigate the wind. Adaptive morality also requires humility. It requires admitting that the tactic that worked in your last job might not work in this one, that the communication style that built trust with one manager might alienate another, that the culture you're operating in now has different rules than the one you came from, and refusing to adapt isn't integrity, it's arrogance. Machiavelli's princes who survived weren't the most virtuous or the most ruthless. They were the most adaptable. They knew when to be generous and when to be firm, when to be visible and when to disappear, when to speak and when to let silence do the work. They didn't lose themselves in the process, they expanded their range. You can be a person of deep integrity and still adjust how you show up. You can refuse to lie and still master timing. You can treat people well and still set boundaries that feel cold to those who expected you to stay soft. This isn't contradiction, it's intelligence. Keep your principles non-negotiable. Make everything else negotiable. And watch how many more games you win without losing who you are.
Theory without application is just entertainment. Let's take the 6 principles and drop them into 3 real scenarios you'll actually face so you can see exactly how this works when the pressure is on. Scenario A, the credit thief. You've been leading a project for 3 months. Late nights, problem solving, delivery. In the leadership meeting, your colleague summarizes the work and somehow manages to make it sound like they drove the whole thing. Your name is mentioned once in passing. Everyone nods. Your manager doesn't correct the record. Most people do one of 2 things here. They either stay silent, stew in resentment, and let the narrative solidify, or they interrupt, get defensive, and come across as petty or insecure, Both lose. Here's the strategic play. Controlled opacity plus reputation as currency. First, you don't react in the meeting, you stay composed, you even nod along. Why? Because confronting someone publicly makes you look small and doesn't change the outcome. Let them talk. Let them think they got away with it. Second, within 24 hours, you send a brief, professional email to your manager. Not emotional, not accusatory, just factual. Frame it as an update, not a complaint. Here's the sentence stem. Hi, manager. Wanted to quickly recap the project name work now that we've presented. I led specific tasks, research, stakeholder alignment, execution. Colleagues supported with specific smaller contribution. Happy to walk you through the details if useful as we plan next quarter's priorities. You've just documented the record. You've quietly corrected the narrative, and you've done it in writing, so it's now part of the file. You didn't attack your colleague, you didn't whine, you just made sure the right person knows the truth. That's controlled opacity, keeping your moves quiet until they need to be visible. And that's reputation as currency, creating a proof point that positions you accurately without performance. If the behavior repeats, you escalate the documentation and have a direct conversation with your manager about contribution visibility, but you do it from a position of pattern, not one-off emotion. Scenario B, the lowball offer. You're negotiating salary for a new role. You've done your research. You know your market rate is $75,000 to $85,000. They come back with 60. It's insulting. Your instinct is either to justify why you're worth more, get visibly frustrated, or immediately counter with your number. Don't. Here's the strategic play. Strategic patience plus outcome obsession. When they say 60, you pause. You let the silence sit. 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Let them feel the weight of the lowball. Most negotiators panic in silence and start talking. They'll either justify the number, soften it, or reveal flexibility. You're collecting information just by staying quiet. Then, when you do speak, you stay calm and anchored to data, not emotion. Here's the sentence stem. I appreciate the offer. Based on market research for this role and my experience level, the range I'm seeing is $75,000 to $85,000. I'd like to understand how you arrived at 60 so we can close the gap. You're not defensive, you're not emotional, you're treating this as a problem to solve, not a personal slight. That's outcome obsession, detaching from ego and locking onto the result. You're also using strategic patience, forcing them to explain their position, which often exposes that the 60 wasn't based on data, just an anchor they threw out to see if you'd take it. If they hold firm, you don't accept on the spot. You say, let me think about the full package and get back to you by specific date. You're buying time, letting them wonder if they're about to lose you, and creating space for them to improve the offer without you even asking again. Negotiators who depersonalize close better deals because they're not trying to win the argument, they're trying to win the number. And often, that means staying quieter longer than feels comfortable. Scenario C, the drama magnet. You have a friend who calls every week with a new crisis. Terrible boss, terrible relationship, terrible luck. And every time you listen, give advice, offer support, but nothing ever changes. They don't take the advice, they don't set boundaries, they just download their chaos onto you and then disappear until the next crisis. You're starting to dread their name on your phone. Most people stay stuck here because they confuse compassion with obligation. They think being a good friend means being an emotional dumping ground. It doesn't. Here's the strategic play. Selective alliance. You care about this person, but you're not helping them by enabling a pattern that keeps them stuck and drains you dry. It's time for a compassionate boundary. Here's the sentence stem. I care about you and I want to support you, but I'm realizing that our conversations have become really heavy for me, and I don't think I'm the right person to help you process this anymore. Have you thought about talking to a therapist? I think you'd get way more value from a professional than from me. You're not attacking them. You're not abandoning them. You're just redefining what you're able to offer.
If they react poorly, get defensive, guilt trip you, accuse you of not being a real friend, that tells you everything you need to know. Real friends respect boundaries. Users punish them. Selective alliance isn't about being cold. It's about being intentional with your energy. Not everyone who needs you deserves unlimited access to you. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop playing therapist and let someone face the consequence of not seeking real help. The intelligence checklist. Before you enter any high-stakes conversation, meeting, negotiation, conflict, decision, run through this 4-point scan. It takes 30 seconds and will save you from 90% of avoidable mistakes. 1. Information asymmetry. What do they know that I don't? What do I know that they don't? Am I about to give away leverage by talking too much? 2. Emotional bait. Is this conversation designed to provoke a reaction? Are they trying to make me defend, justify, or lose composure? If yes, stay calm and slow. 3. Time pressure. Are they rushing me to decide before I've had time to think? Is the urgency real or manufactured? If manufactured, buy time. 4. Reputation risk. If this conversation goes sideways, what's the worst-case story someone could tell about me? How do I protect against that? Documentation, witnesses, clarity. Run the checklist, adjust your approach, move with intention. These aren't paranoia questions, they're pattern recognition questions, and the people who ask them before the moment rarely regret it. The people who don't often do.
Let's bring it together. You've just learned 6 principles that separate people who hope for better outcomes from people who engineer them. Controlled opacity, the art of selective disclosure. Knowing when to reveal and when to let silence protect your leverage. Transparency is not a virtue when it arms people who don't have your best interest at heart. Outcome obsession, the discipline of detaching from ego and locking on to results. Stop optimizing for being right or liked. Start optimizing for the win that actually matters when the dust settles. Strategic patience, letting time, pressure, and other people's impulses do the work. The power to wait while everyone else rushes. The composure to stay silent while others reveal themselves. Selective alliance. Building your circle based on competence and reciprocity, not guilt and history. Your inner circle is not a loyalty program, it's a strategic asset. Treat it like one. Reputation as currency. Understanding that visibility and narrative control matter as much as effort. Competence in the dark is noble. Competence positioned in the light is promotable. Adaptive morality. Keeping your principles fixed and your tactics flexible. Integrity is non-negotiable. How you express it is entirely contextual. You can keep your soul and still win the game. These aren't theories, they're operating instructions. And if you just watch this video and move on, they'll fade into inspiration you forget by tomorrow. So here's what we're going to do instead. The 7-day Machiavellian Discipline Challenge. Day 1 and 2. Practice the need-to-know filter. Before you share anything, status update, opinion, plan, piece of personal information, pause and ask, does this help them help me, or does this just give them ammunition? Track how many times you stop yourself from oversharing. Notice the relief that comes with keeping your leverage intact. Day 3 and 4. Apply the 48-hour rule to one decision or charged conversation. Something lands that makes you want to react immediately. Don't. Wait 2 full days. Watch what new information surfaces. Watch how your clarity improves. Write down what you would have said in the moment versus what you're thinking 2 days later. The gap is the lesson. Day 5 and 6. Run your relationship audit. List 15 to 20 people who have the most access to your time and energy. Rate them on reciprocity and alignment, 1 to 5 each. Identify who you're over-investing in out of guilt and who you're under-investing in out of neglect. Make one adjustment.
Reach out to someone who scored high, or start letting someone who scored low drift to their natural distance. Day 7. Draft your 3x3 perception plan. Pick 3 stakeholders. Define 3 qualities you want each to associate with you. Brainstorm 1 proof point per person you can create in the next 90 days. You don't have to execute it yet, just map it. Get clear on how you're going to shape the narrative instead of hoping someone notices. At the end of 7 days, you will have fewer regrets, more leverage, and clearer boundaries. You'll start to feel the shift from reactive to responsive, from hoping to engineering, from playing checkers to playing chess. I want you to track this. Journal it if you can, and then come back here and drop a comment telling me which day hit hardest. Tell me what you noticed. Tell me what changed. Because here's the thing. You're not alone in this. There are thousands of people watching this right now who felt the same frustration, the same betrayal, the same exhaustion of playing fair in a game where half the room abandoned the rules years ago. Let's build this together. Take the challenge. Do the reps. Report back. Let's go.
If Machiavelli just went from villain to mentor in your mind, hit the like button right now. It tells me you're done playing checkers and you're ready for chess. Subscribe if you want more of this, because strategic psychology isn't a one-time watch, it's a system, and we're building it piece by piece. Next video drops soon, and it's called 10 Psychological Tricks to Read Anyone in 30 Seconds. You're going to learn how to scan body language, decode vocal patterns, and spot lies, insecurity, and leverage before someone finishes their first sentence. If today was about controlling how you move, the next one is about reading how they move. You don't want to miss it. Now, before you go, comment below and tell me, which secret are you applying first? 1 through 6. Controlled opacity, outcome obsession, strategic patience, selective alliance, reputation as currency, or adaptive morality. Drop the number, tell me why. I read every single one, and your answer might be exactly what someone else needed to hear. You just armed yourself with something most people will never understand: the intelligence to protect yourself without losing yourself. Use it wisely, use it ethically, and remember, being strategic isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming unshakable. Stay sharp, stay ethical. I'll see you in the next one.